He loved music and the friendship that music brings, from jazz groups to marching band, college studies in music education to the bands he performed with. He was always in his element with music. That was very brilliantly obvious when he was on stage. He loved his family dearly and was always proud of their accomplishments. He will be missed immensely by all of those he loved. He loved music so much that his bachelor party was a hootenanny of love songs at one of the local bars. I was there and it was amazing. At the wedding, his one request for the wedding was that there was a song by a 20th century composer. That was his one request for the service. His main request for the wedding reception was that we have a polka band. And when he said, I need a polka band to play at the wedding reception, I said, well, then it needs to be great combo. And he said, I can marry you. We spent, the majority of the money that was spent on that wedding was great combo. And we were lucky to get them when we did, because they won a Grammy shortly after, and they doubled in price. John loved being around people, and our parties were infamous. I still hear about our parties, how much fun they were. There were just people, and nobody knew names because we always had name tags for some reason, and we'd make up names, and I'm not sure why, but it was a lot of fun. They were usually costume parties too. Anyway, they were always full of people, food, and fun. I can say with confidence that this was not the ending that anyone wanted for him, and he will definitely be missed. Anyone wants to come up and share some thoughts, we would appreciate it. All you have to do is just push this button.
John Locke. Not sure exactly what I'm going to say. I grew up around John and our family. Knew him when he was pretty little until he grew up, got out of high school, went out on his own. What I really remember about him is his smile and his laugh. Mentioned his humor that was always lots of fun, always good for something there at any kind of gathering or something to say. Yeah, I always appreciated his music, because he could play about anything, it seemed like, or you give him something and he'd fiddle around with it a little bit, and then pretty soon he was playing some kind of tune. So I got to see him, dink around with some interesting instruments. His mom had a few interesting instruments floating around the house that I'd watch him play around with whenever we'd be there. So and in recent years, it seemed like mainly we just saw him when we were at a Thanksgiving gathering, and I definitely miss him being there for those times, because like I said, the other things mentioned, it was always good for a conversation, interesting conversation about just about any topic you could come up with, because he had some unique and interesting insights into things in a different way of looking at a lot of things that you wouldn't necessarily come out with an angle that you wouldn't always think of, but would really get you to thinking about that. So, anyway, that's what I can say about it.
Leave at Middle Earth, where our kids were going to grade school, and we became friends because they were a blast, and we were a blast. Our kids were a blast. I just remember those times as being very, very happy, and he was a lot of fun, and I'm sorry. But there's some good, real good things.
And I'll echo what's already been said about his playful nature. I remember when we were younger, growing up, our grandmother James was a very prim and proper woman, and she would always want us to give her a kiss when we were leaving her house. And he would lean in and he'd lick her cheek. And it would mortify her, but then she'd laugh. So he had this great sense of humor, and that's one of the early memories I have of him. Most recently, in his later years, I can't tell you how important Micah and Aaron were to John.
I want you to know that he loves you dearly, Paige as well, but to have kids, you guys really enhanced his life and you meant everything to him. And I want you to know that. He shared that with me on numerous occasions and phone calls. I want you to know, you probably already knew that, but it's real. So, and he will be missed. You're right, Paige, he's gone way too early and still can't figure it out why. But anyway, he will be missed. So thank you all for coming.
Whenever I first met John, and we'd been dating for a little while, and he said, I'm not really sure about you, but I sure let that mic go. So I think I want to keep saying that. There was one day that we went and had, I don't remember why, but we went and had Chinese buffet, and we were looking at the Chinese horoscope, and we noticed that it said something about how he was born in the year of the dog, I was born in the year of the dragon, it said dragon should never marry a dog, and I said, hey, it's a good thing we're not Chinese. And he goes, oh, have I told you? Oh, I did want to say thank you to Corolla for the flowers, and also Ron King, Corolla, and Cliff Childs for the food. And Maureen, you need to go get food. Thank you.
Didn't recognize you. I'm Bob. I first met John when he was about 10. I was married to his mother for 27 years. One of the first things I can remember about John's we made a trip to Colorado. And help me, Jenny, did he get the measles or did he get chicken pox? He broke out from chicken pox on this trip. So the rest of us went skiing, I remember, but John didn't. So over the last 20 years, John and I didn't have a close relationship, but we would talk to each other about 3 times. His birthday, my birthday, and Father's Day. I think he started. I think he called me on my birthday, and then I did remember to call him on his birthday, and I did have the opportunity to accuse him of being an old man. He qualified for AARP. And one thing about it, he was definitely smarter than me. I'm going to miss those phone calls.
My name's Rex Hall. John and I were friends for a lot of years. I had the honor of being his best man at Paige and John's wedding. I was with him for a lot of the times in his life and down times in his life. And he was there for me. Paige might hold it against me, but I just remember that I knew him separately and her separately before they were together. And I just remember that they had, in some ways, a similar sense of humor. And I just remember that I thought they would be good together. So I said, hey, John, I know this really cool lady named Paige, and I think you should meet her. And then the next thing I knew, hey, we're getting married at this really cool church in Tulsa. I think you gotta come. John had a way of including everybody in the room. No matter who you were, and it didn't even matter if he liked you or not. He would, you could be in a place and then he would find a way to have a conversation with you and bring you into that conversation. And if something was tense, he would like diffuse it. I remember one time he and I both had motorcycles, and then there was a party. We were at somebody's house, and somebody had sat on my motorcycle and knocked it over, and they broke one of the turn signals. It's just weird, things that just come to your mind. And I was so mad. I just remember how mad I was. And he just came to me and said, "Hey man, it doesn't matter. Just get you some duct tape and Delaware wire and we'll fix it." He always had a way of just making things all a little bit better. Another thing is we were coming back. The one, we were at another party. Kind of funny how like we had a misspent youth when we were in college. I think we call it that. We were at a party and somehow I wound up carrying everybody's beer. And at one time I made a point of saying, like, why am I carrying everybody's beer? Because it was like one of those parties where it's half in somebody's house and half in the front yard. And of course, John was there, so there were some bands going on in the house, and there was live music going on. Why it was not raided by the police, I have no idea at this point, because it wasn't far from campus. And I didn't know anybody there, but somehow I was carrying like 2 cases of beer. And I was like, "John, why am I carrying everybody's beer? This is not my beer." He's like, "That's okay, your beer truck, you carry the beer." And from there on, up until the last time I talked to him was a few weeks prior to I found out his passing, he always called me Truck. So we're talking in the 90s until now, my nickname with him has always been Truck. And he always had a way of, his humor had a way of diffusing every situation and including everyone, and the world will be a lot darker without that kind of brightness. And I'm going to miss my friend.
I'm glad you said that about the wedding, Rex, because over there at one of the tables, there's a photo album that I remember to bring that I think were the only photos I still had of John from that wedding. If you look at that wedding album, you'll probably notice that there's a picture of a avocado green cake that says, "When a man loves a woman." And the story behind that is John's brother-in-law was kind of a prankster, probably still is, I can't imagine that he's changed. Anyway, he would put avocado green appliances into our luggage when we left. It was hilarious. But one day, John and I went to Subway, and we were both starving. We walked in, we got our sandwiches, and this song came on, and both of us simultaneously wrapped up our food, even though we were still starving, and ran out of the restaurant because it was Michael Bolton's "When a Man Loves a Woman." There was no discussion, just a dude. So if you would like, the pictures are over there. Oh, I see Ron is looking at them. But please help yourself. And anybody else, please come up and share.
From the late 80s, when he was playing video games at the Bob's Dave's and then Bob's Hole in One, where I worked usually after I got off work at the deli or some other late night music venue here in Norman. And then from that, I, of course, worked with Mr. Mills for about 2 decades, and both Paige and John were happy denizens of the establishment. We all shared a love of trivia, that knowledge that serves no useful purpose. But from that point, after, and I did go to the wedding as well up in Tulsa. Didn't I leave the conga line once? I think I did. But from that point on, John and I, with Paige's assistance, or maybe more appropriately, it could be be called insistence, went and played basketball, did pickup games at 12th Street. And he had a knee surgery, and I think it was good therapy. But our bonding was complete after that. Even a week before his passing, he was commenting on a particular kind of basketball shot that I showed him, and how much he enjoyed shooting it and making it and surprising the heck out of everybody else, you know, because sometimes he surprisingly didn't recognize the level of ability and talent that he had, which was immense. I live a block from the stadium, and as such, I have a lot of people that come and park at my abode. And for the last decade, every home game, John has been there helping me. I've had some health issues. At this point, mostly lower lumbar issues. And so I haven't been as spry as and athletic as I was for most of my life. And having him there, assisting in the parking, and sharing all kinds of things, music, politics, life in general, has been a part of my life. I know this is a situation that we all will face. I have not demonstrated this level of emotion until this point. And I kind of hope that I get through this without having done so. But I will miss Gianna totally. None of us are perfect people, but he was my friend. And he was always there for me and for others. And he would be laughing to see me at a loss for words. That's not, that doesn't tend to be one of my characteristics. But love you, Gianna. We'll miss you forever. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Wilson. I've known everybody here at this table for so long. I guess I pretty much met Paige and John before they got married at Mr. Bell's doing lawn trivia. And yeah, we all just started hanging out. And fast forward a little bit, and he introduced me to the great world of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I knew what it was. I played on the computer, but I didn't actually. He was really in that whole pen and paper, telling stories and creating. His brain was just like the stories he would come up with, and it was always, you know. I don't know if you guys have played a lot of games, but he was really into games, and I know we have gone on that and trivia, and I'm just up here, I have no idea what I'm saying, but I really, we created that Firefly game, and we played that for a while, and it's just, he got all these ideas and all these, it's just so much creativity. It wasn't just games and stories and music. And again, someone said, you could talk to Ben about any subject, and you'd be there for hours just talking about whatever, because he had a little interest in everything. And I'm so sorry, guys. I just, the world is not right. We'll miss John.
Hi, I'm John Mooneyham, and I got to know John after putting up a flyer in the music school looking for musicians to help my preppy rock band be a preppy fake jazz band. And he and another fellow responded, and we did a performance, and the response to that one-off side project was much better than the crappy rock band had ever achieved. So we ended up switching gears and changing to that. That band was the Melodious Funk Infinitet. And John was, I'd say 90%, 95% responsible for all the arrangements, either of original material or of the classic jazz songbook. And even though that band oscillated between 12 people and then down to 5 people, John and I were the only constants in that band. He was always quick with a laugh. The band would not have existed without his arranging skills. And I sort of sadly put the stick to it when I moved to Oklahoma City in 1999. John and I were in intermittent contact after that, and I kind of lost the thread the past few years. So I was mortified when Paige alerted me on Facebook that John had passed. And I'm very sad about it. And I don't have anything else to say. Sorry. Bye.
When you guys got to open for Mike Watt,
Oh, right.
and he said afterwards that Mike Watt came up to him and said, "Hey, I really like that the Thelonious Monk song that you did." And he went, "Yeah, we didn't, those were my compositions," but he was really flattered that Mike Watt thought that it was Thelonious.
Since the guys aren't getting up, I'm gonna stand up first. My name is Melissa Ann Bulmer McKelvey Thomas. I knew John, but I don't know John. I met John in 8th grade in band. Music was always obviously a huge part of the experience with John. Came to Norman, was here for a while together. I don't know that I clearly remember all of our activities, our first couple of years of college, other than a good time was had by all. Lots of infamous parties throughout high school even, so sorry if I'm getting anyone in trouble here. John was very inclusive, whether it was friends, teachers, parents. I mean, he got along with everyone. And he will always represent a snapshot of my youth. And I will remember it very well. Some of the guys have much better stories.
My name is Neil Pollard. I was, what? Can you hear me? My name is still Neil Pollard. I knew John in high school. I knew him in college. He and I were college roommates. We were the only people each other could stand living with. I would say that probably still goes for me. And I met him his freshman year, my sophomore year in Memorial. He and I both played trumpet along with Dupree back there. And I met him, I was no different than several other people I went to high school. I had no idea who I was when I was 14, 15. And John was the closest thing to a soulmate that I met. He and I, he helped me figure out who I was, mainly through his sense of humor. He had a marvelous sense of humor. I mean, listening to people describe him, that's John. That's the John that I knew and he grew up with. But his sense of humor was just so random, so funny. And he was the only one who would get my jokes before I even told him and vice versa. He had a beautiful soul, beautiful heart, completely accepting everything that's written on the pages there. It's absolutely spot on. Completely lack of judgment. Inclusive, would accept everyone for who they were and loved it. As I said, very funny, but also just incredibly curious and loved to explore. And that's one thing that he and I would love to think of random things to do together. I remember one Saturday in high school, I remember what grade it was, he called me up, he goes, hey, let's take the bus. I'm like, okay. So we met at McDonald's near the Promenade Mall at 41st and Yale. And we waited at the bus stop for the bus. And I'm like, let's go downtown. All right, we went downtown, we got a Coney. Could not figure out how to get home. So either he called his mom or I called, I don't know, we called a ride, like, yeah, we're downtown. Well, how'd you get there? We took the bus. What bus? Tulsa has a bus, you know that? One time in college, we lived with each other for most of my years, most of our years at OU. First in a dorm, and then in an apartment. And we both came home to Tulsa one weekend. He called me up and goes, let's take the train back. Did Amtrak suddenly? He goes, no, let's go to the freight train yard and catch a freight train going south. So we did. Well, we thought, and then we realized it was going north, so we got the next stop and abandoned that, and I can't remember how we got home, but we didn't take the bus home. But we would just love exploring, whether it was the tunnels under Riverside, walking under Brookside in the tunnels, or he was a marvelous musician, far better than any I think I've personally known. We would play in the orchestra, and we would play in the orchestra. There was a concert that was performed every year, usually a mass, that the vocal music teacher in Memorial High School produced. It was always at the Holy Family Cathedral. And we were bored once because Mozart really hated trumpet players. And our part was exactly the same as the timpani. So we didn't have a whole lot to do. So we got bored, we decided to see if we could climb to the top of the spire at the Holy Family Cathedral in downtown Tulsa, and we did. Figured out how to get up there. We found this ancient clock with this beautiful cathedral, it's got the clock faces, and we found the clock mechanism. We just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. I have so many stories like that of John. That's the person I became, and that's because of his influence on me. People have talked about his musicianship. It was spectacular. When he and I lived with each other, but once every 3 or 4 months, we'd go to the pawn shop and we just randomly buy a musical instrument. And I would fiddle around just to see what he figured out how to play. Always a different one, sometimes we'd switch. And I would always give up after a week or two. Doesn't matter what it was. He would pick it up and he would get music out of it. It was amazing. It was really amazing. And then when I moved, I lived outside of New York City, which I fell in love with the first time I went to New York City when I was a junior in high school, and John was there with me. And we both just fell in love with New York City. We went again on a vocal music tour. The idea was to go to Broadway, go to New York City, see the usual tourist sites, and then see a lot of musicals. And so we did that. As soon as the lights went down, those theaters, John and I would sneak out. And went to Times Square, got fake IDs. Yeah. I still have mine, and it puts me about 68 years old. And we explored Manhattan. We ate street food. And every time I buy a shish kebab on the street, I still with John. Anyway, I lost touch with him after I moved away. Did a lot of work, took me on travel, and he wasn't on Facebook, so it's hard to keep touch in social media. So, like you, John, I was mortified that I hadn't kept in touch with him, but felt like when you have those formative years, you feel like, like we saw several of our high school friends last night, just fell right back into it. Like we hadn't missed a beat, like it had been just a couple of days since we'd seen each other. And I always thought that would happen again, but I was wrong.
My name is Mike Dupree. I'm like Neil, and Ray Miller's high school friend. Is it on? Here we go. Okay. So Mike Dupree, high school friend of John as well. We from high school to college and beyond. So it's been a long journey. I remember the first time I met John was in this Buckaroo Bonsai stage. Some of you remember this. And he had red glasses. And that was kind of one of my first remembrances of him was him in his Buckaroo Bonsai glasses. So he was a trumpet player. He was, as others have mentioned, an immensely talented person, very creative. That always came through in really everything he did. And you saw that in so many different types of experiences. So, I can recollect coming to his place and spending 2 or 3 days not showering, playing video games nonstop, and having just an amazing time. And so really great times there. We did so many things in high school. Sadly, so many of them were kind of swept from memory, but as well as in college. And so I really regret that we kind of lost connection in the 2000s, and wish we had stayed connected. Really honor my time with John, and the world would definitely be a lesser place without it. So hope to see you again someday. So thanks for your time.
Hi, I'm Rick Linker. John was a childhood friend of mine too, and as you said, it's like our formative years. You can just pick back up with him. He had, I keep hearing a lot of things here about how creative he was and how outgoing and how friendly he was, and I couldn't agree more. He and I were in band together, and then one day we said, well, let's start playing cello. And we're, seniors, where are the cello players? And we had another friend, Brad Brannon, who decided to go to the orchestra and play an upright bass, kind of like you would an electric bass, so it didn't work out well. But John he just picked it up right away. And when he would do this, when he would be talented, he would do it in a way with such flair, that ridiculous flair, and he just had no, I was always self-conscious about myself, and he didn't care, And so, when we performed, he would, dress in these outlandish things. We had this thing that we would do, and I think he was probably the ringleader of it, but there used to be this restaurant in Tulsa called Molly Martin's House of Odd Repute. And we would dress in our ridiculous wear, our white dinner jackets, our stupid ties, and everything like that, and he would just love it, and we had such a nice time. He, one of the last times I saw him, I was in law school, and so I was invited to play in a band. And I played saxophone, so he wanted me to play a gig in Norman. And he said, I said, well, what do I wear? And he's like, just dressed super outlandish, like the white dinner jacket, maybe some tie-dye or something like that. He goes, we all do it. And I go, great. And I show up, and nobody's dressed that way. Not even John. And so I'm thinking, well, nobody will know me here. And I was in law school at the time, and front row. There they are. all were. All my law school friends, they looked up, didn't know who I was. Because I was John that day.
Okay. I'm Kevin Bednar, and I knew John from my freshman year in high school on, so we all were graduated the same class of high school, so several of us, so we came here together. Met a few people who graduated a year before us. We mostly hung out together for several years there. Made scenes of ourselves and drank way too much and all these normal things. Having so many memories of John while you guys were talking, you know, it's kind of hard to pick one out. And so I'll pick one that's random that has nothing to do with anything that you guys said, but to me was one of the quintessential John things. You guys talked about him randomly liking to just do things, just up, all of a sudden head off in some direction. I remember running into John he was probably early 20s, so probably, you know, early 90s. Seeing him, and he was just absolutely red, like lobster red, like he was sunburned from hell. And I was like, what happened? He said, well, I decided to ride my motorcycle to Las Vegas. It's a lot farther than you think it is. He said obviously it wasn't perfectly sober. He rode all night, and eventually he was so tired he went to sleep in a cornfield or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. And that's how he got his sunburn, waking up, baking in the sun. And then he just turned around and came home because, well, it's a lot farther than you think. And that to me was a very John-like thing to do. And I think that's the same motorcycle that he had later. And he loved playing Magic, right? Magic the Gathering, the card game. And I worked in Borders, so I got a discount and I got an employee bonus. I got like $30 a month or something. And I had it piling up. I wasn't going to spend it on anything. He said, if you give me your employee bonus, which was a few $100, and 30% off Magic cards, I'll pay for the motorcycle. And we're like, okay. I don't remember why he wanted to get rid of it or what it was.
Because he hurt his leg.
Yeah. So, anyway, so we did that, and I ended up with his motorcycle for a while, and that was fun. But yeah, I guess he wasn't riding with me. Didn't want to ride anymore. And Rex told the story of the party that he became beer truck at, and I was at that party too. And he wasn't just beer truck; he was Truckosaurus Rex.
And then later I was also Muhammad truck. There's another story for that one.
But that was one of the things. The only reason I know Rex is because of John. I mean, there's so many people that I know just because John would make friends with anybody and just randomly like, oh, just show up the party, come over here. You just follow him wherever he went, and you meet people, and here 30 years later, I probably know a third of the people I know in Norman, I know right just because I know John. So I think that's the limit of the stories I can think of at the moment.
I'm Carrie Gibson Rayano. I knew John from 30-ish, 35-ish years ago, maybe even more, through music, through band. He was just always the life. Like he was the life, like so many people have said, he brought the joy, he brought the fun. Band to me was like my second family. Actually, it was probably my first family because, in high school, you don't really love your family and we're all going through so much at that time, but just having him always be there and always experiencing everything we did in band and the trips and the parties and just spending time with him, it meant a lot during those times. I haven't really been in touch with John since, goodness, a couple years after we graduated. But he was there the night I met my husband, so that's a very memorable moment. But he was so fun. He was the life, and that joy is definitely needed today in our world. But so just wanted to share that with you guys.
It's kind of weird just to see if I could kill time so I didn't have to say anything because I'm not really much of a public speaker. But also, just so I think of what I wanted to say.
What's your name, Micah?
Thanks, Mom. My name is Micah Stewart, and John James was my dad. He came into my life at a really early point, and there's so many great things that he and I did in my formative years. And I can't remember who, I apologize, it's a whirlwind of people talking, but Neil, he formed who I am as a person, as a man, even as a dad. It'll be 6 years ago on Monday, I had my son, and it's been the easiest process of my life trying to figure out what I need to do when, because I can always go, what would John do in this situation? There are so many things that I'm so excited to do with my son, and because it was things that I did with my dad. John is responsible for my love of music. I got into orchestra early, and the kids, they would have practice. I had practice. I'd bring home the instrument. I played double bass in orchestra, and I think, if I remember correctly, I was fortunate enough to be able to have a loaner instrument at the school and another instrument that I brought home. So I didn't have to lug that back and forth on the bus, because that's quite the feat for, I started playing when I was probably 9 or 10, so playing an instrument as big as I was a trick. But, the other kids, they would have to practice on their own, they didn't have, but I had my own personal tutor, because I would play bass and he would play the piano along with me, just to kind of get me through it. And talking about games, everything from Magic the Gathering to I didn't get into Magic. What I got into was Magic Light, the Pokemon trading card game. Because as soon as he saw that, and he was like, oh, it's just like Magic. Okay, cool. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this, 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 and this. And here's why you're going to be able to, if you do this with your deck, you're going to be able to go in and just stomp everyone in the... And I did, because I had one of the best tutors.
I can hear his voice saying that.
Just such an important part of my life, and I'm going to be very sad that he's gone, but also very happy that he was here.
Micah mentioned that piano, which was a wedding gift from my father to John and I, because John played piano and he no longer did. And I remember at one point, John really wanted to play this sonata. And so he spent a lot of time working on it, and it's still one of my favorite pieces of music. The piano was on the other side of the bedroom, and I was in the bedroom, and so the sound just projected into that room, and it was my own personal concert, and it was one of the most sublime moments of my life. Anyway, I wanted to wrap this up. Again, thanks to Ron King, Cliff Childs, and Corolla Schwartz for taking care of the food, the flowers, Scott Melgren for recording, Zach for setting up the virtual guest book and making sense out of the eulogy that I wrote. Love you guys. Feel free, have food, look at pictures. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Sorry, just as a clarification, the event space is available until a little after 3 o'clock, so you feel free to mingle, get some food, talk some more with each other. I'm not trying to keep you out right now.